Hey everyone, it's Joe. So what you're about to see is a sneak preview of our show Create Together Season 2 with YouTube Originals. I just am about to sit down with a NASA scientist named Dr. Dalia Kirschbaum and ask her about what's the real scientific link between climate change and natural disasters. And we're also going to hopefully talk about some good things, like, is there a good and positive future for our world? Hopefully, yes. Check it out.
So my name is Dalia Kirschbaum. I work at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, and I wear many hats there. But the one that might be the most interesting is I work with different groups around NASA and partners around the world to bring different satellite data to bear when there's natural disasters and help understand the processes in preventing and understanding before they happen, and then response when they do, and then contributing to mitigation and rebuilding and resilience afterwards.
All right. How did you get into that? Where did you come from? How did you know, like, what I want to do is work with satellites at NASA to understand natural disasters? What was the path?
My path it's an evolution. I always tell people when I am speaking to students that I loved math, but I didn't know where to take it. And I fell into a class in college that talked about environmental issues and specifically natural disasters. And I realized that, we could use satellite data from, these things orbiting Earth to look down and tell us where floods might be happening in Indonesia, where fires might be happening in the West, US West Coast. And so that is really powerful. And so I continued on to study landslides, which is what I do my research on, but also to figure out how we can take satellite data and give it to people around the world to help solve real world problems.
There you go, man. It's funny because I remember actually, I had a really great math teacher in high school. I took math with him for years. I took pre-calculus and trigonometry and calculus with him.
Yeah, me too.
Del Naves, and he was awesome. He's one of those teachers where you're just like really inspired by just being in his class every day. And I was good at it, but it never occurred to me, like, what could I actually do with this, And so when I went to college, I never did any more math after high school. But you found, like, I bet there's a lot of people out there who, like, because math can be pretty enjoyable, especially if you have a good teacher. And
right.
But you found, like, a way to take it out of the abstract and actually work on the world with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a really powerful tool, but you need to figure out where to apply it or it doesn't make much sense, I mean, it's just harder to make things, I don't know, feel relevant. And so, the thing that I like about the study of natural disasters is that you can take science, you can combine different measurements to understand the planet and how it's changing and breathing, but you can make that difference at the local level. You can help people understand the situation in their backyards. And that requires a whole bunch of understanding of science and physics and math that you didn't really envision when you were in high school. I didn't, but it was fun to figure that out later on.
Okay, so you're studying and working with natural disasters. That's something I've been thinking about a lot lately on this project on Create Together. There's a bunch of folks in the hit record community have been talking about experiences that they've had with really trying and oftentimes painful experiences that they've been having.
Absolutely.
In particular, there's this one young woman from the Philippines, Mitzi, who's been really inspired to become an activist in climate change, largely due to her experience surviving these awful typhoons that have hit the Philippines just in the last year. And so where my head goes is, I'm not a scientist, and I think I know the answer here, but isn't it important to know for sure that climate change is actually causing these natural disasters? Like, how do we actually know that? And let's be honest, right now in our country, there's a debate around that. Or I don't know if it's really even fair to call it a debate, but there are a lot of people who are unwilling to listen to scientists and who take the position that humans and our industry and technology has nothing to do with climate change. It gets hotter, it gets colder, that's always happening. And
Right.
I guess when I run into those like comments on the internet and I feel like going like, God damn it, you're so wrong. I I will admit that I don't have the knowledge that you have, Dalia, about being able to actually show, look, here is concrete evidence that the typhoon that Mitzi had to endure and that her family and her community had to endure is being caused by human-made industry and technology, et cetera. So yeah, so this is my big question. This is why I'm really excited to talk to you, because
Sure.
someone more knowledgeable than me to be able to kind of answer that question. Is there really a link?
Yes. So
How
over
do
the
you
past
know?
hundred over the past 100 years, humans have been emitting greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, and that really serves as a blanket, and it really traps the heat in. And a lot of those gases take a long time to leave. And so this heat is building up and moving around in our atmosphere. And so the disasters that are caused by these movements of heat are different. And you attribute some of those disasters, such as extreme heat waves. We can pretty confidently say that climate change is directly influencing the frequency, the intensity of heat waves. And that impacts drought and that impacts fires. We see the increases in fires, extreme fires in Australia, in California, Siberia. Just last year, 2020 was a record year. There's some other things like storms where we know that the air can hold more moisture, and so we have more extreme precipitation because we just have more water in the air. And so while it's difficult to attribute any one storm, any one fire to climate change, when we see these events happening more and more rapidly, we can start to understand what these patterns are in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And from the science, we can understand these and attribute them by looking at observations over time, by modeling the processes and understanding the physics. And together, that gives us a very clear picture that humans are causing the warming and that all of these extremes are being exacerbated by this heat that's being moved around our atmosphere.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to break down some of what you just said. So the first thing you said is humans have been emitting greenhouse gases for 100 years or something. I think what you're talking about is like the exhaust coming out of cars, et cetera. Yeah?
That's right. So since the Industrial Revolution, we have carbon dioxide that's being emitted from power plants, from cars, and that gas stays in the atmosphere for a long time. And it actually serves to kind of block some of the heat that's coming in and trap it.
Why is it called?
But there's other greenhouse gases too.
Why is it
Sorry,
called? Why is it called greenhouse gases?
Well, so the greenhouse is kind of the metaphor we use, right? So you have, when you walk into this place to grow, plants, right? And so you walk in and it's glass and the heat's coming down and it's really warm because what's happening is the glass is actually trapping the heat to help the plants grow. And that's kind of what's happening to the world, is that heat can't really escape in the same way that the heat in our greenhouses can't.
The gases that come out of car exhaust pipes and power plants, et cetera, are forming.
Similar to the glass in a greenhouse.
Got it. Okay. I actually never knew that. I've heard of greenhouse gases, I think probably my whole life or something, and never.
I'm so glad to help.
Exactly why. All that. So this gas comes out. How do you know, like in a practical sense, how do scientists know that gases that come out of a car exhaust pipe are forming this greenhouse glass cover that's trapping heat?
So we can observe this from space. We have satellites that can look at greenhouse gases. And before that, we actually can look at ice cores. So we can go back 800,000 years and we can drill into the ice and we can measure the gases in the ice bubbles. And so one of the arguments is that we have natural variability. We do. The Earth moves. There's lots of different reasons why. And so the signal of those gases, which are natural, goes up and down and up and down. But what we see now is that we are, far beyond where we started in that 800,000 year pattern. And so that is directly attributable to the carbon dioxide that humans have emitted. We have fingerprints for volcanoes. We can look at fingerprints for other natural variability. But the fingerprints that humans are caused, climate change is all over it.
So you can drill into ice and know what kind of gases were in the sky 800,000 years ago, and then paint a picture of how that has changed between 800,000 years ago to now?
Yes.
Wow, that's cool. Mm-hmm. See, why isn't that on the news? That's really, so you can tell that there's more gases, and you can tell that that creates more heat, and you can tell that that's not just, okay, I want to actually, then my next question, you brought up, so wait, and you just said natural variability.
Yes.
So I'm going to do my best to put that in my own words and tell me if I'm right. Okay. Natural variability, you mean that it gets hotter, it gets colder from year to year, or from century to century, or millennia to millennia, and that's natural. But what we've seen in the last 100 years or so since the Industrial Revolution is not natural.
Right.
Got it. And that's how you can tell. You can say, like, hey, we have the whole record on ice for 800,000 years. Natural variability, the temperatures go up and down, sure. But then starting in the Industrial Revolution, it goes.
It's the hockey stick, right? That's what they say the hockey stick is. And we've measured those gases from, Hawaii, from the top of Hawaii, of the Hawaiian volcanoes. We can actually measure very accurately the increase every season in greenhouse gases as we continue to emit.
So you in the scientific community feel like there's a real consensus. There's a lot of certainty. People know pretty for sure that this is happening and that it's caused by humans. I know that at NASA, I read that at NASA, you also do a lot of work trying to communicate these ideas. That's, I guess, why you and I are talking right now. What kind of conversations do you have, or what kind of arguments do you face when folks say, no, we don't think that climate change is caused by humans?
Well, there's many ways to address that question. I think it's about who you're talking to. So, there's some people who are convinced for whatever reason that is what they believe, and it's not based on fact. And so you can agree to disagree and go your separate ways. I think that far more people just need to learn more and understand at the right level. And so, at NASA and many other, agencies and groups around the world, we talk about, the facts, what we've learned, what we've observed, what the global community has agreed is happening. And more importantly in all of this is, what can we do about it? What can we do as a community now that we understand the science? We know what to do. It's just difficult. But that is a challenge that I'm hopeful we will be able to work together on as a globe, as for science and for the planet.
What are those things? What can we do?
Well, climate change is really esoteric and difficult to wrap your hands around, right? But the impacts are happening now, right? It's rainy day flooding, more extreme storms. In 2020, we had 30 named storms of the Atlantic with $22 billion weather disasters in the US. That was unprecedented, right? We know that things are happening now and they're related to climate change. And so, some of these global activities to make policy to curb emissions are really happening, right? Cities are making tremendous efforts to curb their greenhouse gas emissions with pretty aggressive strategies. Companies are making pledges for zero emissions in the future. And so I think that while we can't reverse the impacts that we're seeing of climate change now, and those that, what I study, which is disasters, we can, at the local level, make our own decisions. We can invest in, when you're going to change out your refrigerator, make it more efficient, or maybe use public transportation, be more aware of what you eat and where it comes from. Those local decisions can make a big difference at the community level, as well as you become more aware and can advocate for topics that are much broader than an individual.